Hey, welcome everybody. I'm back. We took a little bit of a break to kind of get the end of Q2 closed up, but we are buttoned up, and now I am thrilled to have my guest on today. He is the CEO of Shift Group. He is a former athlete that has an incredible journey for us to dive into. He does his own piece on Coach to CEO. I am excited to get to this one, man. JR Butler, man, how are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped to be here, Dave.
Yeah. Now we tried this out. So I know you're running on a little bit of sleep deprivation out there, man. You have a new one, right? Little boy, is that right?
Yeah, little boy, Jack Butler. Jack
Nice.
Butler.
That's a
Yeah.
strong name, by the way. That's like a
Yeah.
that's a strong name. That's
Yeah.
so good. So all right, so let's kind of dive in, right? Because I have a lot to get to. I never get to about like half of what I have down, but like we talked about just before we came on, I don't usually talk about the A/B testing and emails and the how we write and all that stuff. That's whatever, right? To me, it's the journey and your mindset and kind of how you approach life, and that will dictate a whole lot more than an email that you write somebody in the wording, right? And now you've made no secret about this. I'm just going to dive in, and you probably know where I'm going. You've made no secret of your hard journey of coming out of an athlete, dealing with that depression, transition, kind of, call it what you want, even into, where you needed professional help. And now you made that total switch into where you're speaking about it and helping people, man. Like, take us all the way back, man. Like, how did that come to be?
Well, I think I always struggled with call it mental health. Now it's like it's okay to talk about, but
Mhm.
growing up, I'm one of three boys. My father was a hockey coach. He's in the Hall of Fame in Massachusetts,
Wow.
and I'm the oldest of three boys. And my middle brother was essentially a phenom from like 7 years old. Right? He went on to play in the NHL and the Olympics.
Right.
And I always I always joke around like I wasn't even the best hockey player in my own house my whole life. Right? It's and when you're 9 years old and your 7 year old is brother is better than you, that's hard to deal with, right? So I kind of always had this knack for trying to get attention in other ways from my parents, right? Which isn't always a good thing. So like I always had that kind of in my core, but I did end up like having some success in hockey, playing Division 1,
Yep.
despite again not having the same natural talent. Like my personality, my identity was really tied to the game, really tied to what I had accomplished in the game. And then one morning you kind of wake up and you can't really say you're a hockey player anymore, and it sucks. And for me, like I kind of fell back on my old ways of getting attention, right? Being the party animal, being the life of the party, the personality in the locker room. And when you're making money and you have a lot of free time, those are kind of dangerous. So I really didn't get my shit together. Hopefully, I can say that until I got real serious about my profession. And I realized this. I went to see my brother play in his first NHL game, and he was like dialed in, Dave, like buttoned up in a suit. Knew the whole roster of the team he was playing the night before. Took a game day nap. Ate a good breakfast, ate a good lunch. Was just ready to rock. And I was like, at this point, I was very early in my sales career, and most days I was hungover. I threw a outfit on the way out the door. Didn't always shave. You know, didn't get ready for meetings, and I had this epiphany like, get over the fact that you're not a professional athlete doesn't mean you can't be a professional. And that kind of light went on inside me where it's like, hey, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right. And that's kind of, I stopped drinking and I just started approaching, this career like I approached my hockey career, and like becoming a student of the game, setting goals, developing a passion to become excellent at the skills that it was going to take me to achieve those goals, and then practicing those skills, those behaviors, those habits with intention, every single day until I achieved those goals. And it wasn't easy, but it was when I put it in the context of like what it took me to play Division I hockey, and I applied it to this specific thing I was doing, it changed the game for me. And that's kind of, I attribute a lot of the success I've had in the past 17 years to just that mindset of being a professional.
Man, that's good. And I'll tell you, I went through a pretty similar thing, right? I came out of the military. We're in a uniform.
Right.
You know what you're after every day, right? And then all of a sudden, you're not, and you're not, fighting for the flag, not to be all cliche about it. You're going and, selling like a widget. And you're like,
Right.
man, this is kind of that, like, you're like, you just felt lost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just felt completely lost, in terms of it. It took me a while to get through it, and just understand that, hey, I'm not in the military anymore, and that's okay. I still have an identity of me. I don't have to wear the uniform to be, the rank in front of the name, right? So that's interesting how that's came to be. By the way, my brother went on to play D1 sports, and I was always like, oh look, my 9-year-old's brother is better than his 15-year-old big brother, right? So it's I get, there's a whole lot of parallels there. I completely get it. So then when you take a look at, you had something, I forget where I got it from, but I'll read it here. It says, happiness and my passion come with me. They come early, stay late, and do the work that no one else wants to, right? So happiness and my passion come with me. Is that something that you just kind of, is that part of that transition? Or is that something you had way back as as an athlete, and you kind of took it?
I think so. I think it was there, but I think, we're kind of like, and this is a problem today. I see it all the time in our business, where you have like these new career starters who are being told by really successful people to follow their passion, right? Like follow your passion. And usually when you look at that person that's telling you that, they like own an insurance company, right? Or they made billions of dollars like melting iron ore is an example that I've heard recently. And it's like, oh wait, so when you were in 7th grade, you said you wanted to melt iron ore someday, like that's your passion. And like what I realized in that kind of like awakening moment was like, you're not going to be passionate about something unless you work for it, right? Like, so I always say, like, you don't follow your passion, you work for it, right? Like if I was really good at spitting spitballs, like I could spit them 100 yards and hit a target, I'd probably be really passionate about spitting spitballs. So like what I always think of is like, like your situation is what you make it. You can be miserable or you can be happy, and you got to find a way to like make yourself passionate about whatever you're doing, because you're gonna work a third of your life whether you like it or not. So if you're gonna do something, like make the most of it, become passionate about it, and get excellent at it. And what you find, and I'm sure you found the same thing in sales, when you start getting good at it, then all of a sudden it is really fun, right? And you are passionate about it, and you are happy to wake up on Monday morning, and you don't get you're not fighting the demons down as you drive down the highway to go to your job. So like, that's my whole thing is like, I think follow your passion is one of the worst pieces of advice that you can give to a 22-year-old college graduate. Because if that's the case, everybody's going to be, Instagram influencers and like traveling, right? Like if that is something you're passionate about, then you got to go find something to get passionate about that you make a lot of money, because you're not going to make a lot of money being an influencer for the most part.
For the most part, right? You can build that side. I hate the word side hustle, but you can build it up, right?
Yeah.
And then make that leap, right? Off. That's fine. I tell folks that when, and maybe this is me being old school, I don't know, but I tell folks, I go, look, man, you go into a new job, and I come from that military background. So the military puts you through boot camp. Call it whatever the hell you want. There is an indoctrination period where you submerge yourself, you're away from family, and you just do it. And you learn it, and you have to get into it, and then you can get into a normal routine. I don't think starting a new job is any different. Anytime I've started a new job, I always tell my wife, I go, hey, look, I'm in 90 days, right? In these 90 days, I am going to freaking dive in head first and put in probably more hours than I would on day 120 and day 150 in year two. So yeah, you get an indoctrination period, and then you got to, I mean, there's a reason why it's there. You have to learn it. You have to be kind of focused on it. You have to make an impact. Like, they hired you for a reason. They hired you to make it. They hired you to come in and do something, and that could be an individual contributor. That could be leading the team, whatever. Dude, if you take those 90 days to talk to my customers or to, whatever, no, man. Like, I'm expecting my new guys when they come in, man. Hey, I hired you for a reason. I put my name next to yours, saying that you're going to be good. So now this is our trade-off. I'm going to bust my ass for you, but I expect you to come in and just crush in the first 90 days. And I don't mean by numbers. I mean by learning and work and what can I do, beyond practice, if you will. Right? That's just me. I mean, that's just how I look at it. So
if that's old school, Dave, I don't want to be new school. Like, that's the right way, dude. It's the right way.
Now, do you find that you still have to look at your identity in terms of, instead of being an athlete, now you're a CEO, right? Do you still find yourself kind of like, your dad, right? Your CEO, you're all these things. Do you ever find yourself drifting into that? Okay, instead of my identity being an athlete, now my identity is being a CEO.
Well, I think like what I learned during that transition period was like, your identity isn't necessarily your title, right? Like dad or CEO. Your identity are really the intangible characteristics that you've developed through your experience and eventually your habits and your mindset, right? So like, I still, so when I look at my identity, if somebody asks me like who you are, I say, listen, I have strong work ethic. I'm coachable. I'm competitive. I'm accountable. I'm a good teammate. Like, so like, it sounds like I'm describing an athlete, but that's what makes me a good CEO. It's also what makes me a good dad. What makes me a good husband, right? And it's also the mindset. So like, my identity now isn't necessarily a title. It's who I am and how I show up every single day. And I guess you could still say once an athlete, always an athlete, but that's how I look at my identity now, is what do I do on a daily basis and how do I show up to other people?
Every single show that I've done, I always say I'm looking for about 45 seconds that I'm going to take away and say, okay, that's it. That's my clip. That's what I'm going to tell people. If I take nothing away personally, that's it. I think that's spot on, right? I think we all have different words. I think we all have different pieces. But I think that's tremendous. Now let's dive into your current company. What made you start this? Like, just go. I mean, I know what it is, but happy to hear you kind of describe it better than I can. But what made you start it? Like, what made you kind of just take the, hey, I'm going to be the entrepreneur and not just, go work for someone else?
Yeah. Well, so the entrepreneur thing, just start there, right? Because that's important, right? I was a chief revenue officer, I was a VP of sales, making good money, equity, all this stuff that comes with, a successful career trajectory in as a sales leader in the technology industry. The first thing I realized, being at that level for, a decade or so, was I was in a lot of rooms with a lot of really wealthy, smart people, investors, executives, CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, all those types of people. And one of the things that jumped out at me was like, these people are no different than I am. They wake up, they put one foot in their pants at a time, one sneaker on at a time, and they're all, and this is like the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about in the boardroom. They're all just trying to figure it out, Dave. Like nobody knows. There's no silver bullet. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. They have a lot of experience that they can pull from to make decisions, but they're all just trying to figure it out. And I worked really hard, just like you do, as a salesperson and as a sales leader. and I realized I'm working really hard to build enterprise value and equity for other people. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to work as hard as I was working, but I wanted to do it for myself. And based off my experiences, I knew I was just as hardworking and smart as the other guys and girls in those rooms. So that's number one. Now, that's one part of it. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do, JR? And I have this unique experience of transitioning that sucked, and there was no good solution for it. I just had to figure it out, trip and fall my way into the right career. So that's the number one reason I started the company. Is I wish it existed when I was 23 years old, struggling with, partying and just not having something to put all my energy towards. So we want to be a place that athletes and veterans like you can come and do number one, identity exploration, number two, career exploration, number three, career upskilling. That's the goal. And we don't charge athletes $1. We don't charge vets $1. We never will. The second part of my life experience was building sales teams and struggling in the entry level role with a massive side of attrition, because you can hire a kid because he's got a good personality and he's intelligent, and you hope that they're going to come in and they're not going to mind cold calling for a year, getting hung up on 99% of the time, and you hope that Uncle Joe isn't going to give him an accounting job when it gets hard, right? And we had a lot of success. We sold a company for $2 billion and we had a 50% attrition rate, right? Imagine what we could have done if we had a 10% attrition rate. So I struggled with hiring my whole career, especially in the entry level role. So that's the second reason I started the company, is like, I wish there was a place I could go, find people that I already knew had the right intangibles that you can't interview for, and I could see that they were actually trained and knew exactly what they were signing up for and had a little bit of practice doing the job I was about to pay them to do. So that's the whole premise of the company. Is I built it for myself. I built it for 23-year-old JR and 33-year-old JR. And I think that's why we're having success, is because I understand both sides of our market. I understand the athletes. I got guys like Sean that understand the veterans, and I understand the sales leaders that pay us money. And I think that's really important when you start a business.
Oh, 100%. So I always tell folks, and I said it on here before, I said, look, man, I'll be a great employee number 10, employee number 5. I don't know if I'm employee 0, right? Like maybe I have that, or employee 1, maybe, right? Higher math skills, right? That's South Jersey logic and math right there. So from that standpoint, though, what was the biggest learning element? You come in as, hey, we start the company, right? You're in. And how long have you been doing it now?
Officially 16 months. So
wow.
we launched
so
the company
really,
in February. Yeah.
So this is fresh.
Yep.
What was the biggest learning point you've taken away so far?
Revenue is the only thing that matters. You can get wrapped around the axle on messaging and operations and automation and finance and all this other brand and all this stuff. But like, if you don't have a clear path to get somebody to give you money for your service, and you're doing it so that you can fund all the other important stuff, right? And we're still, I am a CEO, but I am a sales guy. Like, there's stuff we're doing that I tell like my operations friends, they're like, are you kidding me, JR? Are you doing that? You're doing that in Google Drive? And I'm like, yeah, man. They're like, you're a multi-million-dollar company. Like, you need to do this and you need to do that. I'm like, I'm just trying to make money right now. And then once we get to a point where we need to where this isn't scalable, I don't want to spend Sunday in QuickBooks, which is what I do right now. Then I'll figure that out. But I can do that because we're making money. So that would be, and that's easy for guys like you and I to understand, Dave, because we're sales guys. You see a lot of technical founders that don't realize it's like, hey, if you have an idea for a product, go out and sell it as a service at first, which is what we're doing now, right? We're going to move the business to a software business eventually.
Really?
Right now we're a services company, and that's fine. We're making money. We're profitable. So I can do whatever the hell I want as far as anyone else is concerned.
That's true. The idea of moving that to a software company, was that the idea all along?
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
that was the vision all along, 100%.
So you're now in a recruiting space, taking the veterans, which I know well, right? I have, you probably know, I have experience in that
Totally.
with athletes, and you're going into the recruiting element, talent acquisition, and call the sales teams and do that whole dance that I've done for years. But you want to take it now to software. You want to
Yep.
take it to where I'm not even going to guess. Why don't you just walk that dog for me? What's that look
So
like then?
so imagine you log in. I could show it to you if you want, but I can describe it.
You can
But
describe it. Go ahead. You're good.
you log into a portal and you see hundreds of candidates. You can search them by start date, geography. You go in, the candidates that haven't done the training, you can at least tag them and see who's the right geography, who's got the right start date.
Sure.
In those candidates, you get to watch a video of them telling. Think about the 4 questions you ask in a first interview.
Sure.
What's your story? Why do you want to do sales? Why do you think you're a fit? So the candidates answer those 3 questions before you ever interview them. And then when they finish the training, there's another part of the portal where you see those candidates. You can watch those candidates present cold emails, present account research assignments, do live cold calls, live discovery calls, present their 30, 60, 90 for their first job as a BDR. So you can watch hundreds of candidates. We call it game tape. You can watch their game tape before you ever interview them. So you're accelerating interview processes, ramp time, reducing attrition, like all the shit that I dealt with as a sales leader. That's how I built the portal to solve it for. And we're just not charging for a subscription for it yet because we want to have a high quantity of candidates on there to be able to feel comfortable to say, hey, you get access. We can say hundreds. We want to say thousands. When we can say thousands, then we can charge a subscription fee for the platform.
I like that. I like that. I mean, I've been the sales leader now for in a recruiting organization, so I had it, not from that perspective, but I can see where sales leaders are going to go, yeah, give me some autonomy on this. Let me choose. That was always the thing, right? Hey, you're going to bring me 3 candidates. How do I know the 4th candidate isn't mine? Well, that's what you're paying me for, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, now you're saying, hey, here it is. You choose. I'm gonna show you enough, if you will, of what's out there, and now you can go select and go at it. And if you're teaching your candidates 30, 60, 90, I didn't know what the hell 30, 60, 90 was 5 years into my sales career, right? I didn't have a clue. You're like, what's 30, 60, 90? I'm like, well, this week I'm going to call this person. Maybe I forecast next week. Maybe. Right? Yeah, my boss, and by the way, I always suck at projections. I don't think if you can teach me projections, JR, let me know, because I always suck at projections. But that's a whole nother gig. In terms of, there's something I wrote down here. You had quality, quantity, personalization, and relevance, right? In terms of some really key pieces for you. Do you incorporate that into your own organization, or is that just an overall, anything you do, you got to look at that and say, hey, if I nail those things, I'm good.
Yeah. I think those, that's mainly those 4 things are really what I think about when I'm thinking about like getting my message out to people, right? You gotta get your message out to a lot of people. The message has to be really well done. It has to be, personalized to those people, and it needs to be relevant for them right now. So, and I know we didn't want to get into the details, but like you get plenty of advice on LinkedIn and other places about all these like secret tricks to sales. My whole thing with sales, and I've done it for 60 quarters plus, everything from $5,000 credit card swipe products to, we sold a $25 million deal to the biggest bank in the world. It doesn't matter. The things that work are everything, Dave, right? Mm-hmm. Like people always like, what works? It's like, you have to do everything. You have to do everything, and you have to do everything really well. You have to get the channel right. You have to get your email right. You have to get your cold call game right. You have to do discovery right. That's what works. Is there's no secret bullet. And that's why we make a lot of money, but that's why a lot of people quit and don't make it in this career, is you have to get good at everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's frustrating at times.
It is.
right? And
Yes.
and then as soon as you're good, the damn game changes, right? You thought
Yeah.
you're good at research. Well, Chat GPT just came up, and I have a new guy literally came in and said, "Hey, Dave, check this out. About 5 minutes before before the call, I'm just putting in Chat GPT. Hey, give me the top issues that could be facing this industry. Click. Okay, how would what could I do to impact those top two? Click. Literally has it on the call. Goes, hey guys, this is what I see in the market. Is that what you're facing? Hell yeah, it's what we're facing. Literally,
Crazy.
like, like crazy. And we're all like, and almost like you're wait, we're gonna watch game tape. Hang on a second. And he used it. It was smooth. It was relevant. Now obviously that tool was what 6 months old, 7 months old, right? We can't take it for gospel, but you know
Yeah.
what? From what I've seen, that just changed, right? Because now your research has now changed. I can go deeper in about 3 seconds. I talked to a recruiting person. He was a managing partner, and he said, "Dave, he goes with this thing. He goes, those job orders you wrote that took an hour to write, and you got all perfect. He goes, I do that in a minute.
Yeah.
He goes, it's done. He goes, that changed everything in 6 months, and so I remember when we used to track." Used to boggle my mind. We used to track call time, right? And all my guys who are my younger bucks would come in and go, Dave, who gives a damn if I talk to them for 2 hours, if I can still get the sale and I can text them and I can talk for 10 minutes, right? And we
Yeah.
fought that. Like we were fighting that like upstream, and the new guys had it right. They
Right.
were like, people don't want to talk anymore, man. They just want to text, right? They don't need voicemails. I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean you don't leave a voicemail? I'm like, and I look back on it and I was like, oh my God, that's a change that I never realized. And I just fought it, because I was good at that. I wasn't good
Yeah.
at, whatever. So
Yeah.
it's amazing you say that, because I just think about that and I go, yeah, it is frustrating, right? You're like,
Totally.
well, damn, I don't know how to use that new thing. And now we're into it, right? What
Yeah.
are you seeing out there, man? Like, what's your thing? I mean, you started this 16 months. You have a good pulse. You've been in sales a long time, right? What are you thinking in terms of, you know, is it harder right now than it was 2 years ago? Is it just people are kind of overplaying this a little bit because it's a nice, easy excuse for not hitting quota and working hard? Or like what are you seeing a little bit out there?
I mean, I think it'd be crazy not to say it's harder than it was, 2 years ago. That's very clear. Now, whether or not it's harder for the right reasons is a different story, right? Like you see this anytime there's a downturn, even if it doesn't impact a specific company or an industry directly, when they're seeing the macro like headwinds going in the wrong direction, executives have a tendency, and now I'm seeing it as an executive where it's like, hey, like we gotta wait and see here. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
we can't we can't make a decision. We can't spend on this thing that I see as nice to have because I don't know what next quarter is going to look like right now because of all this other stuff that's going on. So that's how every executive that a salesperson is selling to is thinking right now. So it's harder, but the people that know how to turn their products in their sales process from a nice to have to a need to have, they're not feeling the pain that others are. And I think a lot of people could get away with having nice to haves and hitting their quota, and that's not going to happen anymore. So like, just vigorous qualification and vigorous like discovery and really digging in on the cost, the negative consequences of not changing and not doing anything and making sure that people understand that is critical. It used to be ROI. Now it's ROI plus negative consequences. Plus, you need to tie your solution to the biggest problem in the business. What are they talking about in the board meeting every quarter? Even if you're 10 steps away from that, you've got to creatively figure out a way to tie to that thing. So it is absolutely harder. But if you do those little tweaks mentally, I think you can figure out a way to get deals done still, in my opinion.
You said tweaks, but I'll tell you right now, man, you're the discovery piece. is so critical now. Before it could be like, all right, it's cool, here we go. And then you're off, and then you're like, all right, good, good. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Not now, right?
Nope.
If you don't have some pain, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to that next step. I don't care if that's a proof of concept, if that's a client visit, if it's a demo, whatever. We're not going anywhere, right?
Nope.
Because it's probably it may not be worth my time. Like you just may not be in that. I could talk all day, and if you're not in that position to listen to me, it's going to fall on deaf ears, right?
Totally.
But I love that whole discovery piece, because I think people are now figuring out, hey, maybe I wasn't doing a good discovery.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't understand my client's pain, right? I come from, like Miller Hyman was drilled into my head for that, fix, avoid, accomplish. And then, gap selling is kind of the new thing. But I've always said that, man. And I just look back to some of the stuff I did. I was like, man, I sucked,
Yeah.
and just now, I think I'm beginning to scratch the surface a little bit on kind of my own discovery. And I'm like, man, if I knew this 10 years ago, like what I did, I don't know. I'd be hitting a white ball somewhere a whole lot more often than I am now, or be like, maybe I would open up a new business. But I think
Yeah.
discovery is so critical,
I think for your audience, like the simple mindset is to go in and try to qualify people out, try to find a reason that
Yep.
they shouldn't buy. If you do that, you'll have a lot more success, and you'll do all the stuff that you're talking about. Like that was a trick a switch that I turned that changed the way I sell forever. The problem is, and like gap selling is a great example, right? Like I follow those guys. I love what they do, but he talks a lot about how pipeline doesn't matter. And I'm like, I disagree with you, because if you have a healthy pipeline, it's a lot easier to go into a meeting and qualify people out. Whereas like if
Yeah.
you need that deal to hit your quota, you're
Right.
going to convince yourself that thing is going to close no matter
Oh,
what
you
the
get
truth
happy
is.
ears, right?
Yes.
Anything they say, they can say, Dave, we're not buying this week. Oh, there's a chance. No, it's not, man. We just told you there's no chance. I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, no, no, they didn't mean that. Like, no, they
Yeah.
did, man. But it's the piece that I have come to learn. Healthy does not mean healthy means quality. Healthy does
Correct.
not mean quantity,
Correct.
right? I can have 50 things in there with whatever number you want totaled at the bottom. I don't care, right? If it's not good. I remember my team, I had one of my directors, and I still turn to him now. He came it was about a couple years ago, and I had my pipeline all jacked up, just a complete disaster. And he said, let's open it up. And I'm like, in that little pit feeling in your stomach you get, I'm like, man, this is not going to go well. And he's like, I just click on that one. Like, not going to go well. I had no clue. And he's
Right.
like, well, talk me on that up. And there's notes in front of me, and I still can't figure it out, like what to tell him. He's like, I was like, yeah, that's just one, right? I'm trying to cover it. And he's like, all right, pick another. I was like, damn it. And he's like, all right, Dave, do I have to keep going, or is this a pretty obvious that these may not be the quality? I was like, yep. And I broke up with, call it whatever you want. I just ended about 25 of them. And lo and behold, I had a really good month on the 25 that I went with. Right.
Yep.
So it is a quality pipeline, or, your healthy pipeline is quality. Right. I think that's good. All right. Few last questions for you. And then I still want to go to the mindset, because I just love talking about it. Do you do something every morning that gets your mind right? Is there something that puts you like a warm up, for that brain when you wake up? And we're all human. You may have a little doubt somewhere. It's creeping, and you don't get enough sleep, and you're grumpy. Is it something you do?
Yeah, I gotta sweat. I gotta sweat in the morning. Like
Okay.
if I don't sweat, then I am like, even my fiance will look at me and be like, you need to go to the gym. Like she knows right away. So I gotta wake up and I gotta sweat like first thing in the morning, and then I have my coffee. I put in my Zen and like get my nicotine fix, and I'm like, after that I'm golden the rest of the day. But if I don't sweat, then I'm a pain in the ass, Dave.
All right. You know what? As long as you know, I mean,
Yeah,
as long as you got your trigger, you're good.
yeah,
All right,
yeah.
man. A few questions. We'll wrap this thing up. That's exactly where I was hoping this conversation would go a little bit here, today. But it's a few quick questions. Number of hours of sleep you're getting right now. Like, what are you like, what are you averaging right now yourself here?
I have a whoop, so I actually know this data cold. I'm at 6.5. But right before the baby came, I was about 7. And I when I was in sales leadership, I was under 5 hours. So like, and then I got the whoop, and the whoop changed the game because it just told me like, dude, you need more sleep. Like you're not recovering, you're garbage. So like the whoop actually, even though it's a more of a fitness thing,
Yeah.
actually helps me sleep because the numbers don't lie. So 6.5, which is really, really good for me. I've never been much of a sleeper.
Good. I'll take it. Hell, and I whatever the hell you're like. All right, I'll just say, what the hell's a whoop? Like, what is this? Is this
It's
like the watch?
Yeah, it's the thing you wear on your
Like,
thing. It's awesome.
I need to embrace technology more. All right, Vegas wins the hockey, man. Right. So who wins next year?
I really, really, really like St. Louis, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah.
Did they
Yep.
not make the playoffs this year?
No, they didn't, but they just picked up Kevin Hayes from
Well, I know they
Philly.
picked up Kevin Hayes, which is exactly where I'm going. Can you you turned down like being on the Flyers like fourth line for me, which I still think is an option. Is there any way you could be like the GM, right? Like, is there any way like you can just moonlight? Because quite honestly, I mean, you can just moonlight and do it better than what they're doing right now, right?
Oh,
I mean,
it's gonna be a painful couple years for you guys, man. I'm
God,
not
I mean,
gonna
we just
lie.
got rid of Hayes. We got rid of, I mean, we got rid of all these bad contracts. Literally, I don't even know who's on the team. I feel bad for
Yeah,
the guys that are there. I'm like,
yeah,
hey, sorry, have fun in October. You
it's
know, that's all right,
it's
man.
gonna be a painful few years, but let's see what Briere can do. I like him.
All
We'll see if
right,
he can do
look,
something.
man, and oh, by the way, I think St. Louis has one of the best, like, music, organ, like whole pieces. If you have to Google this, do it, because as a hockey fan, it is phenomenal, like what they have going on. So I want them in the playoffs for no other reason than to hear the organ. So that's it. All right, JR, thank you, man. Look, I mean, like I said, you hit on mindset, you hit on what it's like to be the CEO, you hit on, kind of that identity that I think we all go through of some nature, right?
Yep.
And look, you provided me. I always love this. I get mentored once a week by different people, and I'm going to take something away from this. So thank you for that. So thank you for being on, man.
No, thank you for having me, Dave, and thank you for your service, and thank you everyone for listening. I appreciate the opportunity, Dave. This was awesome.
That's awesome. All right, everybody. Look, I promise next week we're coming back. I got 4 or 5 people lined up. JR was my number one. Everybody else is in line now to mid-July, mid-August. So thank you. Be safe, and we'll see you next week. Take care.